Okay, Debbie, this one's for you. My first little tutorial. So I have a binder set up. There's all kinds of guides. I tend to prefer the Sizer HTV. So I have all my notes and instructions on the different types and all my hints. I need my blade settings. So if I know what I'm using and what's worked and hasn't worked. There's for glitter. And then for any kind of shirts, I have a couple tricks and hints that I have found useful online for sizing. Here's my Cricut heat press set to the glitter setting. So you've got plus and minus when you have to set your temperature and your time. That's how you start the timer. And that's your on button. If it starts beeping because you haven't used it in a while, you press that and turn it back on. I'm actually going to turn it down in temperature now because we have to do the non-glitter items first. So I have to let it cool down, and it'll beep when it's ready. Shirt is pre-washed, no fabric softener. Hang it to dry. Fabric softener will stop the adhesion. And before you do any kind of pressing, you do a couple seconds with the heater to get all the moisture out. Both of these things, I've been told, are essential and huge for making it work. I've done some measurements. This is a really big pattern. I tend to do 1/3 of the design above the armpit line, but this one looks like it's going to be pretty big, so I've actually moved it up a little bit. But I tend to do a dry layout with the sticky side up before I actually start placing it on. And of course I also have my lint roller. I have to do a peel today. So you lint roll it, then dry heat it for a couple seconds. And underneath is a pad replacement for a press machine as my protector. I also have off-brand heating press mat in case I need to shove it in the shirt. I don't generally for thin t-shirts. I tend to measure and find the halfway point for knowing how to line it up. Some places talk about folding it in half to find the center point, but I find at times that isn't accurate, so I'd rather choose a couple rulers. When you're doing lots of layers, you don't want to hit the HTV too often because it can overbake it. So if you need to trim down the transfer edges so that you can put 2 layers in the same spot, sometimes that's a trick. It isn't always necessary. Alright, sorry it's so close. Don't have any kind of official way of holding my camera. You'd laugh if you knew how I had it set up. So the shirt here is basically laid out. I've done a dry fit to have an idea on where it's basically going to sit. The stuff is sticky, so you can even stick it and have a general idea, like hold it up to you. But I've decided about 2 inches down. So I don't bother setting the timer for the pre-pressing. Sometimes I do, just to be official. But just a couple seconds to air dry it. Here's what the bottom looks like, just nice big flat. Just let it run down. So I'm going across the armpits. So I know my center mark is about 10.5. Very often I will measure and do some basic rough lines like this. not super picky to get my line up. Now, normally I would say if you're going to do glitter, you want to make sure to do the glitter first on all your layers. But this tree is going to be tricky sticking ornaments on it. So I'm going to just do some lineup first to make sure the basic layer of the tree is where I want it, and then I can actually take the ruler out. So I knew it was going to be about 2 inches down. This is a super glittery one, which will be the second item. But you can see how I've lined it up there, and then because it's sticky, you can basically hold one corner as your reference point, kind of roll your rulers out, and then the tree now becomes my baseline. I can kind of feel that my mat is not all the way at the bottom, so I'm going to end up having to move that down. Just be careful how much you pull it. Which probably means I didn't do a dry fit on there. So as I mentioned, you want to be able to do least number as possible layers. So I trimmed this piece right down here because this is going to be one of the dice hanging off. I trimmed right up to the green. So that you don't want to have any of this HTV on top of the clear transfer. So I have that it's just going to be touching. Otherwise, when you peel this plastic off, it will peel some of that black off. Trust me, you don't want that. Now, the rest of them are going to definitely be overlaps, so I have to pull the transfer tape off before I can do any more layers. Same with the gold star at the top. I have to be able to pull this off. So the only one I can do on its own is here, because the rest of them are like this with ornaments hanging off. So this is the only one I can do on its own. So it's basically ready to start. So the trick with all the layering is you do not want to do this whole one for the full 10 to 15 seconds that it instructs, because you'll end up baking the HTV too much. Glitter is the only one that's very forgiving, so it can take a lot of layers. So this one's kind of a big project. It's going to be interesting how it goes. Okay, so plus of course it's very large. So I kind of just do my lineup, make sure I'm going to be covering the whole thing. You do not need to put a pressing cloth here because we've got all the clear. As soon as that clear comes off, you have to put some parchment paper, which I have on hand, somewhere handy nearby. Oh, parchment paper out of my kitchen. You can see it's been used a whole bunch. I will sometimes do that as a final layer over top. Alrighty, ready to go. I just hit go and it says medium pressure. So I just literally hold it for 3 seconds. Only 3 seconds the first layer, because I want to be able to peel it because I'm adding more layers. If it was this only layer, I would have done the full 15 seconds. Just enough. This peels hot. The glitter peels warm, so you gotta let it cool down a little bit. But this one can peel hot or cold. You can see here it wants to come off a little bit. And ironically, that's the one I did not, that's the area I did not do the preheat on to get the moisture out of the shirt. Hopefully that does not affect it in the long run. Okay, so I've turned my Cricut heater up to the higher temperature for glitter, 320, 20 seconds. And you can see it's nice and glittery. So I'm going to place it right where I know I'm going to end up having it later. And I'm actually going to be moving the whole thing down. You can see my shirt is a little offset here, but I measured from shoulders to shoulders across to get the center point here, even if the label looks a little off. So we got to be careful not to hit this here, although eventually it'll all get hit. So sometimes to protect, I'll do a little bit like that of parchment paper. And this is going to be the same thing. I'm only going to do this for a little bit of time, and I'm only pressing. I've only got it set on the glitter. It is much more forgiving, but I don't want to overheat that green. Not sure how well this is going to actually come off. Ooh, okay. Pretty lucky. You're really supposed to do it warm. Oh. Okay. So now I'm going to set up the rest of the tree decorations, and I will do that at the full amount of time to make sure all of the HTV sits. And I'm turning the temperature down to the lower setting. The glitter can take a lot more extra. We want to make sure that glue sets. Eventually, when the whole thing is done, we will flip it over and do the back. So I might actually do that glitter a little longer to make sure it adheres, because it's only getting hit by lower temperatures later. The glitter you can do a lot extra. The smooth HTV you really can't, or you can see the baking effect. That's why you always want to attach glitter items first. Okay. I have words to go at the bottom down here, but because it won't fit on the heat press all at once, I'm going to do that last. And sometimes you want to do that is figure out what you can do separately if it's something on an edge. So I'm going to set up all this stuff and you don't have to sit through this. So you will get used to placing things on and off. As I was sticking these on, I was trying to be really super careful about not having to unpeel it and peel it too much, because you don't want this clear unpeeling some of your green. So when you're replacing it, just don't press it down till you're absolutely sure. I just had to redo it because I'm finicky. So that's one of the tricks, don't do it too much. So like this edge of green up here, on the bottom of these reds, I trimmed them right up, mostly because I wasn't sure where the rest of the ornaments were going to go. So those ones I can then put directly up, but again, just touching. You don't want any of that black on top. This actually has some clear here. It's okay if the clear is on top of clear, but you don't want any of this black on top of the clear. It'll pull up. So I need to figure out where the rest of these guys are supposed to go.